Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Padres EVT podcast. I'm your podcast host, Diego Garcia, staff writer at East Village Times. Joining me today, in lieu of our editor, James Clark, we have one of our fellow Padres staff writers, Mr. Willy Warren. I'll hand it over to him to introduce himself.
All right, yeah, thank you. I'm Willy, and I run the high leverage baseball account on X. I've been writing for the East Village Times now for about 11 months, coming up on a year with them, which is really exciting. And I'm really excited to get on this podcast today and talk about some really exciting stuff.
Yeah, we've got quite the show planned for our viewers today. For those of you who are viewing, you will find all our links down in the description, our East Village Times site, our respective X pages, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Without further ado, we're going to get started. The offseason is fully underway. The Padres are still kind of taking their time, making moves, waiting till they have a little bit more leverage. So in the meantime, we're here to talk some ball. So we'll start with, there's a real interesting point out there when it comes to player evaluation. I think this is something that we as Padres fans can rationalize and really take in given the current state of the farm system, which is, let's say, debated. Yeah, there are some who view it as a bottom five farm system. There are some who say, okay, there's some upside here, especially with upcoming international signings. But we want to point to, there's a really interesting philosophical debate out there in the state of baseball where it comes to how does an organization or how do an evaluators really value command in a prospect, be it through scouting or through analytics. And it's a real interesting lens that was put out there by some former players recently.
Mm-hmm.
So it really comes down to, how do you view command? What is command in a prospect, and how does that play in? So I'll hand it over to you. Go ahead, right off the bat.
There's so many things that go into it, because I know there's it's easy to kind of think like walks, or how often is it in the zone, how often is it how are they big misses, are they small misses. But there's so much more to command that I think it's like deserving of more than just one grade, because I'm finding it to be now with how much teams are pushing their pitchers to throw as hard as they can, how much command can a pitcher really get in terms of can they locate every pitch, can they locate it in a specific spot, not just anywhere they want it, but can they locate it in those really effective spots, and can they do it for a full 6 innings, for a full 20 games, for a full season of major league or minor league ball. And that's kind of something that that was brought up in this. That was a really good thing to look at, was just how much do you where do you start when it comes to looking at that type of grade.
I will agree. It's a real interesting point about how do you evaluate that, because there's so many little nuances that go into this overarching idea that is quote unquote command. Even me personally, when I evaluate, I look at command higher than I view control, because walks are one thing. Because if you walk a guy, how many times did you miss really far out of the zone? Is it an umpire working with a tight zone? I know with the ABS, that's going to be a whole other nuance to that debate. Are you missing inside? Are you missing outside? Are you throwing it down the middle? I think it's more so about, are you throwing not only strikes, but quality strikes if you're a pitcher? I think that's one of the things that I look at when evaluating pitching prospects. It's really important. If it's a strike, where is it? Is it where you're aiming for? Does it accidentally catch the back end of the plate when you meant for it to be inside? I think it's a bit of both, because you can look at the stuff plus metrics, the location plus, it tells you, okay, the pitch is moving this much and they're locating it this well. It could also really come down to the eye test sometimes. So it's really finding a blend between both traditional scouting and the analytical lens. As I think it's fair to say, as younger baseball minds, we tend to gravitate towards some of the more numerical or analytical measurements of command, but even something like that is so dependent on external factors. It gets hard to quantify when it comes to pitchers. So I think I'm going to bring you up an interesting point to you as someone who is constantly evaluating talent around the league, be it the major leagues, the minor leagues. Do you think that pitching prospects with higher command have more value than pitching prospects with just pure stuff? How do you view that?
I would say I would say yes, but it's a little bit of a blend of both. Like I think, I do think that command is definitely more of like a cutoff. Like if you don't have command, like you just like straight up you won't make it past certain spots, and when you're developing as a prospect. And like that's something that's like, I thought it was really nice you brought up the quality strikes and how that like it's not just about, can you like, because we make it sound so easy sometimes. We say that this dude's got really really good stuff. If he can just throw a couple more strikes, he'll go from good to great. But I do think you definitely have to start with command and then you can move to stuff. But like I really think that like there's not a ton of examples of starters that, I mean, there are relievers here and there who have just blatantly effectively wild kind of profiles, but then in for like the most part you don't really get to the major leagues without like having solid command. And so I feel like that's more important of the two. But definitely, it's like it just kind of starts there, and then how much potential can you get is says how, like, what type of stuff can you pair with that good command, because it often sticks to the guys who are in the low 90s, and then when you get in the higher 90s, usually it's a little iffy. So it's kind of how well can you pair the two while starting with command. That's kind of how I view it.
It's a real interesting way to view it. I think I will agree. I'm very much in the same lens because the command is really going to dictate the ceiling, because you can have like 80 grade stuff, but we've heard this goes around the scouting industry a whole lot, like 80 grade stuff with like a sub 20 command grade, because what they throw is absolutely disgusting, but they have no idea where it's going. I think on the Padres system, they have brought in several arms who are that type of arm. I know just a couple of years ago, you could have made the case that Francis Pena was one of those arms where he has incredibly nasty stuff, but because of the max effort delivery, kind of has no idea where it's going. And that kind of happened again last year, not quite 2 years ago, when he really, really, really broke out. And that's really where you start to differentiate guys between whether they can start or relieve. Another guy, Braden Nett, who the Padres had and ultimately traded away, he was showing that he could develop that command because he was learning how to harness the raw stuff. And now that we're talking about Padre prospects, I think that's a great time to kind of switch to our next little point. You mentioned when we spoke pre-stream, you asked, could Garrett Hawkins break camp with the Padres? I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your case. Let's start there.
Yeah, so he's obviously farther away than a lot of guys. Like in terms of just level alone, I believe he made a little like a small appearance at Double A, like at towards the end of last season. So he's definitely far away in terms of level. But when you watch him pitch, when you watch his, like, the way he throws, what he has to offer, it's really It's like probably the closest to an MLB profile in the entire org, I think, in terms of like, because you can talk about guys like Francis Pena, who are like they've been in it for a little longer, maybe they got the results to go to like AAA. But I think just Hawkins alone, he gets really great ride on that fastball, and he pairs it with a good slide. Like, it just looks like major league ready stuff. And that's why I kind of intrigued that possibility, because I believe, like, I've seen it happen before. I forget who it was in recent years, but it was like, I feel like it's really or it was Brad Gley Rodriguez coming straight from
Mhm.
like, we've seen it before, and it's worked. It's like, I mean, if it's like major league ready stuff like that, I don't see why he shouldn't at least be given a shot to compete with some of the arms who might be older, might be more experienced. But he clearly kind of outranks them in terms of overall ceiling.
Well, the good news for you is he's going to be in Major League camp since he did get added to the 40-man. So um, might as well keep that stock up in Garrett Hawkins. I'm going to be honest, seeing him come from recovering from Tommy John to put up the season he didn't allow an earned run for about 3 months last year. That was the most, arguably the most dominant minor league pitching stretch by a reliever in the last decade. This is coming from people outside the organization as well. So I have faith that, he is going to be a major league arm. It's just, could I have foreseen that he was going to make this big a leap between 24 and 25? Definitely not. That was out of left field in the most welcome way. And I will say, I do agree with your point about he has this stuff. Reminds me a bit of Jeremiah Estrada with the high riding fastball.
Absolutely.
The one concern that I have with Hawkins, and I think this is actually going to go away when he works with major league coaches, is being able to differentiate the breaking ball. Because there are times that his breaking ball acts like a high 70s curveball, and there are times it acts like a mid 80s slider because it comes out of the same slot. Especially from a higher arm slot, I'd demonstrate, but I don't have the green screen to do so. But in other times I have. But when it comes to a high slot breaking ball, there are going to be times where they kind of blend together just from the approach angle that he's coming from, which isn't always a bad thing because sometimes if the shape of the pitch changes on the way to the plate, it makes it harder for hitters to pick up. But that could make it a little harder to command. So if he can show either some differentiation or some consistency in the breaking ball during spring training, I think he's going to be like another David Morgan situation where he comes up should someone get injured right off the bat. I don't think they let him see AAA because if you've seen how the PCL plays, I can't imagine they're going to let a guy with a fastball with that much rise and that much spin see AAA, which is just going to kill the results.
Yeah, that's a really good point you bring up about the PCL because it's tough and it can kill. It can really kill stock. Like it can take pitchers kind of out. Even if like the mechanics are the same, the stuff's the same, it just can like mess with them over a full season. Which is why I do think like I would really love to see him make that jump here because as we mentioned with that high riding fastball, it's going to play a lot better in San Diego than it would in El Paso. And I just like, and with the breaking balls as well, it's like I've seen some like I've seen his slider at times be really tight, and then I've seen times when it kind of drops off, and it usually plays fine because he's playing against like lower level hitters who that's a big change from like the mid high 90s to like the high 70s is a very big difference. But I really would love to see him. It's really I was looking at it's really him, and then he's kind of competing with the two guys they signed to the major league deals, Ty Adcock and Dyson Acosta, and then Ron Marinaccio is the other guy who's the current eighth man,
Yeah.
going to spring training. So I'm really excited to see what he puts together this spring.
Yeah, I will say that Hawkins is on the 40-man, so that is helpful to his case, to make the roster. Ron Marinaccio is out of options, I believe.
Yes.
So that might be another thing that kind of goes into the equation. But as we've seen, we even saw it last year, usually the last guy in the bullpen isn't going to be there the whole season. Last year it was Omar Cruz, who we had the privilege of speaking to, and he's a great interview, but he did not last a long time on the roster simply due to the needs. They needed him. They needed guys like Logan Gillespie to eat up innings. And I think with the bullpen where it's at right now, there must be a reason they brought in guys like Adcock and Acosta to compete for that last spot. Because I don't think they're too worried if those guys don't make the roster, because then they can just have them at AAA because those two guys are sinker heavy guys. So I think that's going to play well in the PCL. And since we're talking about prospects, I would love to hear, because I know the people who are watching or reading, they're used to hearing my takes on prospects. But I would love to hear, is there any Padre prospects that you think are poised to have a really big 2026 season?
I would say I have three names that I put down in my my top 30 that I finished for 2026, and it was Michael Salina. I think we talked about a little bit. Vicarte Domingo was
Domingo.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen him on anybody's list anywhere, and I mean,
just wait till you see mine.
Oh yeah, I need
He's
to
on
see.
there.
Yeah, I would think so. And I'd love to see him, for a full season. I wasn't able to watch him a ton at, I think he was at single A for a small or like
he was there all season. He actually led them in strikeouts, which is insane. As he came in out of the draft and he led that team in strikeouts. Sorry to interrupt. He's a guy I'm really excited about.
Mistyped that, but yeah. And then the other guy I was looking at was Rosman Verdugo, who got solid power results, because it's very hard to find, hitting, true hitting prospects in this system where you're like, oh, they will make it to the MLB and they will actually put something on the board offensively. It's very I mean, you can you can view it different ways, but I believe that it's very thin in that kind of sector, and Rosman Verdugo is one of the other three guys that I'm really high on, because I think he could continue. We were talking about how the Pacific Coast League doesn't play well for pitchers. Well, he just came off a solid power season at high A, and if he has if he's able to keep pushing, keep putting up around double-digit homers, that would be huge for his status. And I think I've got him a little bit higher than I think the general bunch would have him.
I think let's break those three down. Let's start with Verdugo, since we just talked about him. I will tell you this about Verdugo, having watched him. He's such a fun prospect, just in terms of the profile. This system is not really full of power over hit type of prospects, especially on the offensive side. It's a lot of hit over power guys like Zach Evans and Ryan Jackson. But I think Verdugo, his ceiling of what he could be is really interesting. The one concern that I have with him, and maybe he proves me wrong this season, I think I'm really worried just about the floor of what Verdugo could be, because he does strike out a bit. He can draw his walks really well, but he does have a bit of a swing and miss issue. I think that does just come with the territory of, a power over hit sort of prospect. But middle infielders who can hit 10 to 15 home runs a season, I think those are guys that you kind of keep a close eye on. He's played a lot of second and a lot of third, so that's kind of where I would see him. I'm trying to remember where he came in last year. I know he was on our top 30 last year, but
yeah, no, I definitely, and it's it's my kind of take on this is probably impacted by the fact that the Padres are so thin at that kind of that bunch of like power over hit tools, and so it's harder to find guys with those higher ceilings, and so that's why I think I'm attracted to Verdugo in this sense, because although the floor is definitely he could really get stuck if he can't get over that hump, but he's one of the few guys who I do think has the ceiling to eventually make a real impact with the slugging, with the homers. That's something that you can't say for a lot of the guys in the org, and so I guess that's that's what I really like to see out of him, is can he put it all together, because I think he'll really shock people. And I believe that he was ranked higher before this, in previous years. The general consensus was a little bit higher on him. I still see that like young, exciting player. Like I don't feel like he's deserving of kind of to be moved down because of that. I still think he's just as exciting as he once was.
I mean, he's barely 20, so he is a very young prospect. I know Evans and Jackson, two of the guys I spoke about, I believe they're 21 and 22. So I think with Verdugo, you do have a little bit more time to develop that ceiling. And then speaking of ceiling, I want to touch on Vic Domingo, who you mentioned as your second arm to keep an eye on. We actually did, our editor, James, he did an interview with him a couple months ago. Really, I've heard nothing but great things about Vic Domingo, and then watching him pitch, it's an aggressive delivery, but if he can, because this is what he told James, he told him he's working on separating the changeup and the slider, and if he can differentiate those, I think he's going to rise up the system pretty quickly. I think he might be the guy that we're talking about next year. Is there a chance that he breaks the major league roster, because that fastball is just that good. He's got the velo to make it, and if he can command the secondary stuff, I mean, it's all there.
Yeah, so I'm a bit curious to like that end of he like if he can really get like 3 solid pitches working. Do you think he is someone who could like start at the next level? Because a lot of guys would see kind of like he's primarily fastball slider, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Correct.
And high, like he's like you see those little like leaks in command here and there, and you might see the velocity and slider and say this is going to be a reliever like without a doubt. And so I was kind of want to ask you, like, do you see a path to him starting, or do you think that he will end up being one of those high octane guys that they use out of the bullpen?
That's a really tricky question, because I've got his stats right here. He did great at limiting homers. He left guys on base. He didn't allow a ton of fly balls, even though he was mostly a fly ball pitcher. It was a lot of weak contact, and he did work multiple innings quite a bit. I think with him, could they turn him into a starter if he can develop, really refine the third pitch? Possibly. I wouldn't bank on it, because I think, just from having seen him and from what we've heard, it's very likely that he stays as a reliever to really get the most out of his arm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that fastball will definitely play up a lot more the less the hitters see it.
Yeah,
I don't think he's like a Nick Pivetta, where the fastball is going to get up on you and you're not going to see it coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. Well, yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. And I mean, even if he's not able to become like super dominant with like just 2 pitches, as we see kind of more often with like relief prospects in the minor leagues, like. Mm-hmm. It's definitely like I mean he could create a really intriguing kind of profile with his with that third change up, and if he can develop maybe like throw in a sinker here and there, or he can add a curve, like he could become not just the prototypical kind of like fastball slider, he could be really like a really fun kind of guy to like watch out of the pen coming up.
Yeah, I definitely see the sinker case, like kind of like we saw with David Morgan last year, how he added the sinker later in the year. I can definitely see that with Domingo, just to help him get some more ground balls. I think once he gets the changeup going, the sinker is going to play really well off of that. So that's the one thing that I think before he works in the sinker, I think really just finishing to refine how to get the changeup readily into the arsenal is going to be the last kind of the step before that. And then you brought up Michael Salina as well. I think he's one of the most interesting arms to come out of this draft, because he was injured when he got drafted, but every report out there indicated that he was just throwing absolute gas.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I kind of put him up where he was after watching. There's that one video out there on YouTube, and it's just him. I think cranking 102 was, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that like that.
101, 102.
I watched that. I was just like, that's just. I mean, like there's the the risk of him getting hurt. There's like he might not be able to command it. Like having that kind of like velocity like straight out of the draft is just like a dream to kind of work with as a younger guy, because you kind of have this like this room of like you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be like perfect everywhere. If you're throwing that hard at those levels, you'll really have time to to develop other things while you're still getting really good results. And so I feel like he's gonna have a like excellent season once he gets like a full season down. And like I can't wait to watch him. I think I'm the most, or he's the most exciting guy to watch. I think it'll be this upcoming season.
I will agree with you. He is definitely up there on the if I had an excitometer for how excited some of these guys are, he'd definitely be really high up there. I mean, he was throwing 102 as a starter going into the draft. Now, how much of that will be there when it comes back from Tommy John? I think it's a big deal. But even if he's only hitting 97, I think you've got yourself a guy who has an incredible ceiling. I'm pulling up my upcoming list. I have him, quite frankly, Selena. I think he goes in the 10 to 15 range for me. I think he could be a little higher. I want to see him throw competitively, be it in the complex league or even at single A at the end of the year. He's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. He does have a slider and a changeup, and the slider was getting really good reviews. And I think it's exciting when the Padres, who are now known for developing starting pitchers with high velocity, draft a starting pitcher with projectable high velocity. I think he's definitely one of those guys who you get excited about. He's not like an Adam Major where you kind of know what you're getting, very limited ceiling. I think with Selena, the ceiling is a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to see him pitch is really what it comes down to. I know I'll give you a couple of names that I'm looking forward to seeing this year, because we kind of just went back and forth. I know everyone's excited to see Tucker Musgrove, and I don't doubt it in the slightest. The stuff is there.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be a pitcher full time. But I think another guy from the draft that I'm really excited to see is Jackson Delana, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was their 5th rounder. I believe. No, he was their 6th round pick. He's a really, really interesting arm from, the film that I've seen and the numbers that I've seen, because he can hit mid-90s. He can hit 93 to 96 consistently with a fastball. He's got a good slider. The slider has really good horizontal break, so it's a bit more of a sweeper than a slider.
Mm-hmm.
He's adding in a cutter it's really interesting, because it's not necessarily your biting cutter that breaks away. It's a bit more of a floaty cutter that goes kind of up and down, high 80s, low 90s. And this is a fun story. He and I posted about Delana and him getting drafted in his pro debut. I actually heard from his dad, who messaged me, and he told me, Delana, he trains with Mike Mussina, and he learned a lot from him. So that's a real fascinating young arm to keep an eye on. And then another guy that I'm pretty sold on for this year, I put in my notes here. I think, just trying to read my writing here. It's not great when you write it in a hurry. I think another guy is Eric Yost, who made it up Double-A this year. I think he's got one of the nastiest breaking balls in the entire system.
Yeah.
He's got a big sweeper with almost 2 feet worth of glove side movement. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see him pitch, but he looks like Michael King.
Yeah, I feel like I got to watch a bit of him, and Yeah, no, it's like a really fun. It's really fun stuff. Like I remember, just I love like it was kind of like a loopy rainbow kind of shape, and
Yeah,
he pairs that with a sinker too, correct?
four seam and a sinker.
Four seam, yeah. And it's a really fun, really fun profile, and it's also another maybe not the high like the high velocity or the high, like
Hmm.
it's just like one of those kind of more fun, you know, profiles that I think is going to be really exciting to see, like just how far can that big breaking ball take him.
Yeah. And then the one hitter I'm like, this is a hitter I've been talking people's ears off about is Braden Carpathios. I know a lot of guys, a lot of people out there are really starting to get to know that name. He was a name that I was really sold on after the 2024 year. This past season, he got even better. He's hitting the ball with authority. He's got really impressive bat speed. The EV90s and the EV100s are really like we're talking 104 to 112s. So I think he's one of these guys who could definitely be, I'm just saying just don't trade him. He's
Mhm.
because with this system where it kind of feels like everyone gets traded,
Yeah.
when you follow prospects, they tell you don't get attached to prospects, but sometimes you do because you're just so sold on how good they're going to be at the major league level. And I think he's one of those. I don't know where would you put him on your in regards to the bats in this system? How do you view him?
I have him. I had him just outside my top 10 there, and he did get, I believe, like the best pure results of the entire out of kind of everybody, and that's like a really really good sign from a guy who's he's only like 22 years old. He's
Mm-hmm.
a little bit down the line as well. I believe he made it to Double A,
Yeah, he
and
finished the year at Double A.
yeah, and so I'm really excited to watch him. The only guy that I believe I'm higher on, the only real hitter was Kale Fountain, and then potentially the international Joan De La Cruz as well was one of the other
Mm-hmm.
ones that I'm excited to watch. But like outside of those two, I mean, I think he's like definitely like the one who's probably he's the closest out of those three guys, and I think he probably has the highest ceiling. I mean, you can make a case for Fountain because he's still young, but I think the fact that just paired with the like straight up results that
Results.
he's getting. I mean, it's hard. It is hard not to be really excited about him, and hope you get to see him in brown and gold eventually.
I would hope so too. I do have one last prospect related question before we move over to the major league roster. I know a lot of people are wondering, and I think this is something that we can kind of go back and forth on. What are your expectations in 2026 for Ethan Salas? Because people have been so stoked on him. People are saying he's overrated. People are saying he had a bad year. Like, what do you expect out of Ethan Salas in 2026?
Yeah, I got the chance to watch him up close this like during this last spring here, and I can tell you it's one of the best like approaches I've seen in a while. Like I mean, there's lots of things that you could criticize about him. Obviously the health and the swing path is a little weird, and I've heard that a little bit, and so there's plenty of things you can say, but I like there's just certain guys that they're gonna find a way to put it together because they have that mentality at the plate, and I think paired with his ability to go to all fields, it might not be like over the fence power, like, but I mean it's gonna be really really good gap power, and I mean I think he's gonna eventually hit tool is gonna take major strides from where people might see it as now to where it might be towards the end of the season, and then obviously he has one of the better floors with his defense out of any prospect in the entire game. So I would see, I don't think, like that this is his year. Obviously he's a couple years, like years away, but I think he's really gonna kind of recapture that, you know confidence in like the top of the Padres, farm system that's been kind of left vacant when the Padres traded Leo DeFreeze. So, and
I
I'd
think
be
that's a
really interested, yeah, to hear your like what you've seen out of him. Watching him on more of a day-to-day basis.
Well, last year I only got about 10 chances before he went down. But
Yeah,
the year before, I will say he was starting to find his groove. There was a point in 2024 where he had a really strong month, a really strong on base streak at high A. And, I was thinking to myself, okay, maybe this is when he gets promoted. He ends up spending the whole year at high A and then goes up to double A at the beginning of last year. I'm not worried about the defense at all. I think his game calling, I think his ability to block the ball, framing, all of that. The foundation is one of the most impressive I've seen out of a young catcher in, I would say, arguably in the last 5 years. Because with a lot of young catchers, it's either they have an incredible bat and the fielding is eh,
yeah,
or the whole profile is like a 50 grade all over. But Salas is one of the few guys who I think, he was already an above average instinctual catcher. And the question was about the offensive upside. I'm kind of clip farming a little bit if we make this into a short form sort of thing, but I think with Salas, I think this is the year where he gets his mojo back and he really puts it all together. He's probably going to be at Double A again. And the one thing I will tell you about the Texas League and Double A from one of our collaborators who writes about Arizona's farm system is that league has no sense of consistency from one park to another. For example, the Padres Stadium, the Padres affiliate in San Antonio, that ballpark is huge. So it plays a lot like Petco. But if you go to say Midland, where the Athletics affiliate is, they have a lot of wind. The Arizona Diamondbacks affiliate in the Texas League at Hodgetown Ballpark, that park has a lot of humidity and elevation. So that league really tests a prospect's approach and their ability to game prep. I think with Ethan Salas, I'm expecting him to hit around 265 to 280, maybe an on base in the 330 to 350 range. I think his slugging might not be like it might not break the bank, but I think that slugging wise, you're definitely going to get a lot more out of him than in his first year.
yeah, and it's also exciting that he's not super like filled out yet. Like he still has like a lot of room in front of him to grow in the power department, which, as someone who when you look at him, you're looking at his field, and you're looking at it at his hitting first, and then you're kind of going towards his power. To say that he has that kind of, like that type of power ceiling in front of him is really exciting. And it will be really interesting, like if he can put together like a full season and what that really looks like, because it's been a little bit since we've kind of seen that. But I would not be surprised. I mean, it would definitely be. I'm not expecting it, but I would not be surprised if he does turn heads in the power department. And you know it's really interesting. Like he could go either way, as a more of a contact hitter, or more of a power hitter. Like I feel like that's still up in the air for him to really discover in his own profile. So
Oh, most certainly. There's a lot. He's got room to grow, not only into himself but as a player.
absolutely.
And we could go on about prospects forever, but we might do a show for that.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, let's kind of switch over to the major league roster. For those of you who are watching, who are asking, "Where's the major league coverage?" It's right here, friends. Don't go anywhere. So, you brought up an interesting question before we recorded. What's the bigger priority in free agency? Is it first base, DH, or is it starting pitcher? Which do you think is the bigger priority right now?
Well, it's really interesting, because you're just you're looking at two different kind of positions like that. Those two different spots that are kind of like filled. They're filled out, but you don't really know where which spot is more concerning if you were to say leave it all the way up until the trade deadline. So I would say I feel like Sheets going up against righties and lefties every single day. That is a bit concerning to me. And another thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is how, with the new addition of Sung Mun Song, he's not going to be given like a lot of kind of, he's not going to be given a soft landing, being thrown into kind of like a spot where it's kind of him, Sheets, and Jake as like the really only three guys on the major league roster who you feel like could start major league games. And so I feel like that's where I want to improve at first. Obviously, you'd love to get an improvement for Sears, but like I feel better with Sears than I would with Sheets playing every single day. That's how I feel.
That's a fair point. I think with first base, they're really missing that, who's going to hit lefties consistently, because we saw Sheets can do it. He was serviceable. Was he great? Not necessarily, but, he did the job when he was asked to do it. I think that's part of why, it would be good to bring in maybe a right-handed complement or sort of a guy who has reverse splits. I would say the free agency right now where it is, I don't know if free agency is the way to go to bring in that sort of player.
Yeah.
I think you're probably going to have to look into the trade market. If you go to free agency, you might maybe someone like Ty France, who can probably hit lefties. He's done that his entire career. Wouldn't cost you a ton of money. They did bring in Jose Miranda, who is fairly comparable. So here's to, I think he's not gonna blow his shot, if he has a chance to stick at the major league level. He is also Lin-Manuel Miranda's cousin. I think that was mentioned at some point. Hence the Hamilton references. But another guy they could look at, and this is just a name I wrote down before we recorded, maybe someone like a Romy Gonzalez from Boston, because they have a huge logjam over there because they brought in Wilson Contreras. I think you could get a guy like a Romy Gonzalez to kind of platoon with Gavin Sheets, kind of move him around wherever you need him.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of the big thing with Sheets is that you don't really want to have to like rely on him every single day at a set spot. What was really nice about him was really nice about him last season was that you could kind of like put him like you could really put him in and anywhere, and he did eventually take over a starting spot, but he didn't start he started the season on the bench, which is now you're looking up and he might be the best hitter out of the right side of the infield, which is a real big shift from what you're looking at the year prior. So that's why I would love them to bring in a guy like Gonzalez or a guy like France, or maybe take a shot on a Reese Hoskins or something like that. Just someone that kind of gives that group a little bit of a soft cushion of they don't need to all have great years in order for that position group to be average, which is because that's a little scary out of that kind of corner of the infield. So yeah,
that's a great point. I think kind of building that production in the aggregate, I think, is a great way to really describe that. I think, I will be honest, I've written about a ton of like starting pitching possibilities for the Padres. I know you've covered a couple as well. There's a lot of intriguing arms out there. You mentioned that you feel a little more confident with JP Sears than, a lot of people do. I'd love to hear your reasoning for that, because he's a real interesting case. A lot of people thought he was going to be non-tendered. I'd love to hear, what do you think makes Sears, the right guy to be the fifth starter?
Well, Sears is really intriguing because he doesn't throw very hard. He throws a lot of pitches, but he he throws from like a really really low slot, and he hides the ball really really well. That's my favorite thing about Sears, is that I do have the ability to do this. So I will say, like, he does kind of have, he keeps everything in like a line, and I think it makes his his heat a little bit more deceptive than, like, a lot of people would think. He actually ran a 20% whiff whiff rate on it, across the entire year. And I mean, let's also not forget that he played the majority of the season in Sutter Health Park, which is a hitter's haven, and gave us some of the longest home runs we've probably seen outside of Coors Field in a while. And he's just getting to pitching in Petco, like in a full-time role. And when he was pitching there, he was really effective. And that's why, I mean, I could be completely wrong. He could give us another like high 4 to 5 ERA season, but I would love to see a full season of him pitching in Petco Park, and I'd love to see the results, because he's so fly ball heavy. He hides the ball well. He gets whiff. He does seemingly all the things that like Padres do well on the pitching side of things. I don't know. That's why I'm so excited to see, or at least hope I get to see what he can do in 2025. And then
I really do appreciate that you bring up the points about, the environment where he's going to be pitching at, because early season Petco is a pitcher's paradise. They've got the marine layer rolling in, so that home run per fly ball ratio is going to be really low. I think we saw that last year with Kyle Hart at the beginning of the year, and then once May rolled around, he got absolutely torched by the Marlins. I think with Sears, I think you have a little more confidence in him, because his fastball's real sneaky. It'll sneak up on you even though it's 92, 94. I think, if he gets pretty good whiff rates if he can get at least average whiff rates on his entire arsenal, like, he's sequencing that stuff really well. Mm-hmm. And, I feel good about what he could be. A little competition never hurt anyone. I think that maybe bringing in a couple of guys, maybe not on a guaranteed deal, maybe on like a minor league deal with a spring training invite, could be something they could evaluate. For example, I was really in writing about guys like Anthony DeSclafani. I think he could be a really interesting addition, because he added a splitter that was absolutely unhittable last year. I know the Padres are big on guys with splitters or, changeups that have more vertical than horizontal fade. So he could be a guy, but I don't really think they're going to go out and sign a starter unless, let's say they decide to be bold and trade Nick Pivetta. Yeah. Could they do it? Possibly, but right now where the market is at for starting pitching, not really favorable, because guys like, guys that we wrote about, like I saw you wrote about Tony Gonsolin the other day. He's not going to pitch this year. I wrote about Dustin May a week ago. He's since signed. He got overpaid by the Cardinals. The pitching market right now is, outside of guys like, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, the Unks of the world, outside of them, it's a really bizarre market. Could they go out and get one of those guys? Possibly. I mean, Justin Verlander had a great end to the season. But the question is, their options in-house are still fairly effective. I think Randy Vasquez is going to take a step forward, and we're going to be thinking, okay, there's some talent here. It's not just devil magic, as it appeared to be last year.
Yeah. No, it's really, really good that you mentioned just how brutal the market for starting pitchers has been. It just seems like that's just like the hottest commodity out there, and and anybody who's even shown any sign of former success or potential success, it seems like they're just getting double digit AAV. Like, it just seems like it's just rolling off the board nonstop. And so I do like the idea of keeping that competition instead of going outside and trying to find that solution, because as you mentioned kind of with May, is there's going to be a lot of those players who are signed to be that solution who aren't. And I mean, so I really like the idea of keeping of using the in-house options. I know they have Hart as an option as well. They got Tristan McKenzie on that minor league deal, and they're also something I've been really excited about is that they'll have Miguel Mendez, who will also could potentially be up around the also. Like, I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts on him and like where he's at, but he could help this team in 2020 in 2026. So maybe that option doesn't have to be for the entire season. Maybe you just kind of fight and claw your way, and then Miguel Mendez shows up.
I'm honestly surprised we made it 51 minutes without even mentioning Miguel Mendez. Like, I figured, he was going to come up fairly early. But, I mean, it makes sense. We're not trying to talk about the obvious guys, but he is, quite frankly, I think he's one of the most electrifying prospects we've seen in this entire system. I don't think there's a chance in hell they let him see AAA, because AAA for pitchers is hell. So I don't envision him being there. If anything, it'll be kind of like Ryan Berger and at a major where they saw a couple starts and then boom, you're up to the majors. I will agree it doesn't have to be a full season stint for whoever wins the fifth starter. I mean, we saw it with Kyle Hart. That was an experience, to say the least. So I think if we see Mendez, we'll see him, like you said, around the All-Star break is the most projectable thing. Because the thing with Mendez, I'm trying to pull up his numbers while I speak. He's got the stuff is quite frankly phenomenal. I cannot wait to see the stuff plus numbers in spring training. It's going to be absolutely disgusting. Fangraphs has him as number 2 in their system. The one concern that I have with him is just his command, because he really struggled when he got to AA.
Yeah.
But again, AA is a very bizarre pitching environment. He did strike out more guys in a limited sample compared to, his stint at High A. He did win Padres High A Pitcher of the Year, I believe, or he was a Midwest League All-Star. So I think with Mendez, keep an eye on him for the middle of the year, because he's definitely going to get a few chances. I think he is this year's spring training version of Braden Nat, because Nat last year got a couple starts in spring training because they want to see what he had. I think we're going to see the same thing with Mendez this year.
Yeah, that'll be super, super exciting to see him getting, going against higher, better bats, in spring, and getting, obviously I'm really excited as well to get his stuff plus numbers back and all that. But I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this, because I've watched him in basically only this season when he really broke out. And how do you feel about his kind of his weird delivery, because he kind of has that step back and then he steps through it. Like, do you think that impacts his command at all, or do you think that's completely unrelated to it? Because that's just something I've picked out while watching him. So I think that's kind of interesting. And I feel like it could lead to him kind of yanking the breaking ball or the missing high with the fastball. Is that anything that have you seen that at all?
I think it's definitely the result of a mechanical change, because I remember seeing him a little bit in 2024, but he was starting games, but he wasn't going very deep into games, so I didn't really have a lot of chances to see, the stuff then. Now I think he's getting down the hill more effectively. He's definitely locating a lot better. It's not like he's just blowing 100 by everyone, even though he does do that quite a lot. I will say with Mendez, if he can keep the mechanics consistent with what he's been doing, and he can limit the walks at AA, I think that's really going to tell you, just how high his ceiling is. The stuff is one thing, but the fact that he learned how to command the baseball so effectively because not only is he throwing strikes, but he's throwing quality strikes at the minor league levels. And if we go into the advanced numbers a little bit, trying to see where the first pitch strike rates have shown improvements. The swinging strike rates are insane. He averaged a 15.8% swinging strike rate this season. Although he does, I will say, a little more first pitch strikes would be great. He had about a 46% first pitch strike percentage last year. So I think if he can continue to command the baseball like he did early in the season, he is definitely going to be, in contention. But this was the first year he really showed above average command. So year 2 is going to be the real test of, was it for real or was it? I mean, I don't want to call it a fluke because it was really impressive, that stretch he had in the summer. I just hope it's for real.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to go on the record and say that I do think that his improved command is gonna stick this season. The one thing I took from every single time I watched him, obviously, the shapes are great, the velocity is great, that's super exciting, but just where he got his out pitches, both whether it was in the field or whether he was getting swing and miss, he was consistently getting his fastball to the top of the zone. He was consistently bearing the slider, to the back foot against lefties, and even some front and back versus righties. But I just think your point of him throwing quality strikes is really that. That's why I think he is going to be legit when it comes to his command in 2026. Because
I'm going to agree with you there. I will say on the record so far, whenever, at least in the time that I've been hosting this podcast, whenever we say I'd like to say on the record, we are 1 for 1 on those predictions so far. Last year it was I said Dylan Cease would get more than $200 million in free agency, and he got 210. So we are 1 for 1. Let's hope it's 2 for 2.
That'd be awesome. Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's safe to say the biggest need right now is a power bat.
Mm-hmm.
Or some slug to complement Gavin Sheets for the major league roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely finding that slugs. It could really be, it could be a signing, a trade, one player, like a bunch of bench players. I know one of our guys. I believe it was Mike who's just talking about how bad he thought our bench pieces were. So even if they don't pan out to be that, that the production that doesn't pan out the way you want it to, that's also somewhere the Padres could really improve at is on that bench. I remember the very first piece I wrote for the East Village Times was on what could the Padres do with their 4 bench spots, because they maybe had 10 guys who I thought could bring a real impact. And this going into 2026, I don't think I would write that same piece again.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely an area where they're a little more thin, and I'd love to see them make a couple signings on the margins, or even swing a trade and get multiple guys back, because they could definitely use some depth there.
Most definitely. That's a great point, I think. And, I would go on about that, but I really don't have anything to add. I mean, they definitely have room to make additions to the bench, and getting a guy who can hit for power would definitely be one of them. Get yourself to right-handed Gavin Sheets, and, they've got a pretty good group of guys who they can have on the bench. Is there any other points we want to bring up before calling the show?
I don't have anything, but I'd love if you have anything to go on with. I'd be happy to answer any question or anything.
I'm just gonna give you a name to be on the lookout for. I'm not sure if he's gonna get a spring training invite or not, but Marcos Castañon, one of their 2022 draft picks, I think he was drafted in 2022. He could be that right-handed hitting sort of infield complement. I think if you look at what he did last year, he could definitely be one of these guys. I mean, whenever we do our prospect show, he'll definitely be a guy we can kind of talk about. But
Yeah.
that's really the last name I want to bring up before
I
we
will.
kind of.
Yeah. I will read up on him and watch some of his at bats. I'll see what he brings to the table, and I'm excited to hear that you're excited about him, because yeah, it would be absolutely be huge if the Padres can get that kind of production from, in house. That's obviously the best case scenario.
Most definitely. So thank you everybody who tuned into this episode of the Padres EVT podcast. We're trying out a few different formats. This is one of many. Our staff is quite large, quite knowledgeable. As we say, we know ball. So, you're gonna get quite the cast of personalities on here. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and click subscribe so you don't miss any more of our Padres related content. Go ahead and click the links in the description for eastvillagetimes.com, us personally on X, or our writer pages on evt.com. And stay here for the latest in Padres news and coverage. For Willy Warren, on behalf of our staff editor-in-chief James Clark, this is Diego Garcia saying thank you all very much for tuning in. We'll see you all next time.
See you.